Hello everyone, welcome to Voice Essentials, the Voice Essentials live hangout I should add. Good to be with you. I hope you're all having a great time wherever you are in the world. Of course, we do these live hangouts every Monday at 2 p.m. Now, the reason I mention this straight off the bat is because I can see that we've got a few people that have been waiting around a little while. Hello to all of my regular viewers, to Matt, to Karen, to who have we got in there? Yuhui. We've got a few of you that have all jumped in very early. I was quite surprised when I opened up the live chat section to see that there was already a string of conversation going on. It would appear that many of you have been caught out by the change of time for daylight saving, perhaps. Of course, many of you have then thought, okay, well, maybe Daniel will have gone backwards. In fact, Daniel doesn't live in an area that has daylight saving. Here in Brisbane, Australia, we are in a state called Queensland. Australia is split into states, not dissimilar to America. And so I'm on the eastern seaboard of Australia in the top state called Queensland. And Queensland, much to my, I would prefer this wasn't the case, but we don't have daylight savings here. So that means that we haven't changed. I haven't moved. My time has remained exactly the same as it always has been, 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, as opposed to Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, which is happening in New South Wales and Victoria. They're two other states here in Australia. So there you go. That's why some of you have jumped in early, and I think it might mean that some of you are watching quite late. Let me know what time it is in your part of the world, and pay particular note to what time it is, because I saw some of you had jumped in already quite quickly. I wanted to. I thought, I'll just start a bit early. So we are starting about 10 or 12 minutes earlier than I normally would. So it is just before 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, but I didn't want you guys to miss out. You'd been waiting around so faithfully for so long, so thanks for doing that. I'm looking forward to today's discussion. We're going to get a little bit philosophical today, and we're going to talk through, how do we critically assess another person's voice? We do spend a lot of time critically analysing our own voice and developing our own sound, but the last couple of weeks when we've had Fergie's performance, and we had the performance by Pink, both for the national anthem, the American national anthem, it has raised a discussion point of how do we appropriately reflect on these performances? Because I've made some statements here on the channel, and I've quite appropriately received some response back, and so I just want to talk through how we as a community can appropriately respond to some of these comments. I've also got a statement from Jody that I want to read a little bit later in the show. As many of you know, Jody, my wife, was diagnosed with bowel cancer only 7 months ago yesterday. Wow, 7 months. It's gone both quickly and slowly, if they can both happen at the same time. It has been quite the ride, and the journey continues. But Jody put a Facebook post out yesterday, and I thought, look, you guys have been so supportive and sent so many well-meaning thoughts and prayers our way that I just wanted to read her little Facebook post to you all, and so I'm going to do that later in the show. And of course, if we have time, and we may well have time, I've got to finish up by at least 25 past 2, half past 2 today. We will get to your Q&A, as we always like to do. We couldn't do that last week, could we? Because we had technical issues, and you know how this YouTube thing is. It can be a little bit hit and miss, but we do our best. I hope you'll stick around for the rest of the show. Let's get into it.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
Yeah, so I want to talk about this thing about assessing another singer's voice. It is important that we learn to discern as singers and make really high quality assessment on another person's voice, because that in turn empowers our development. But there is, in my humble opinion, and much of what I'm about to discuss through today is based in my own worldview and my own opinion, and I want to own and ground it as best as I can. There is a way that we can do that so that it remains constructive towards another singer. And I think the overarching point that I do want to make today, and it's pretty important, is really what I said overarching, what underpins my worldview on this subject is probably an old proverb, an old statement, that is, judge as you too would be judged. And that is, how would I want another person to assess my singing? This singing thing, regardless of who you are, regardless of what level you have attained, regardless of what accolades you have received, this singing thing, for most human beings, mere mortals as we are, can be quite a vulnerable space. And, unlike any other instrument, we don't get to sort of place an extrinsic sort of application of comment onto an external instrument. When the comments come, the comments are made towards us, the singer. When we make comments towards others, we are making comments towards them. There's nothing more disingenuous in many respects than the comment being framed with the, look, this is not personal, but. I'm sorry, when we comment about another singer, it can't not be personal. The challenge is that, and in fact, I've got a new video coming up, not this week. This week on Wednesday, we're looking at how to take your chest voice higher. We'll get into that on Wednesday. I think it's next week. It is next week, when we're going to talk about, sorry, it's not next week. It's actually, I've only just written the script. This is actually in about a month's time, when we're going to be talking about us as singers remaining objective, remaining so that when we receive honest critique, we remain objective. The challenge is we don't get to determine that the person we are delivering the critique to, whether it be directly or indirectly, have the capacity nor the maturity to be objective in their reception of our critique. I hope I'm making sense. This is all sounding a little bit muddled, fuddled in my mind. But the important thing being is that it is so important that we, when we're offering a critique, that we do so in a manner that is both honest, constructive, and caring. We do live in a world, don't we, where everything wants to be so black and white. If you're not for me, you're against me. We're seeing this, and you will have heard commentary about this on news, on talkback radio, on there's a whole plethora of places that you can hear discussion about the fact that the public debate is becoming polarized. You'll either have the fors or against, and the moderate voice is becoming drowned out for the most part. And do you know what? I grew up a very religiously bigoted young person. It was the context that I was born into and nurtured into, and I'm not blaming anyone for that. That was my upbringing. I've spent the last 15, possibly the journey started about 20 years ago, probably about 15 years ago, where I started to be able to see, actually, the world is not black and white. The world has has a wonderful array of grayscale. The world isn't grayscale. The world has wonderful colours to it, but there's not always an absolute wrong and an absolute right. And so the difficulty becomes, when we observe a singer, back to our discussion point, when we observe a singer, another person who's giving it their all, and let's just take case in point the Fergie scenario from a few weeks back, it is all too easy to just see what's happening on our screen and simply make an assessment. The challenge is that when we make an assessment on that person that we're watching sing, the chances are you don't have all the facts available to you. And when we make a cut and dry assessment without all of the facts available to us, we fall victim to making an assessment that is likely to have error in it. And I've made that mistake here on the channel, and I've made the mistake many times in my life, professionally and personally. I am doing my best, and I'm hoping that today's discussion encourages you towards doing your best to actually stop and reserve your comment until you gather some of the facts. So, for example, and this is, I don't believe this was the case, but let's just hypothetically say we observed the performance on Sunday, of Fergie, and we don't know that she's sick, for example. In fact, let's go back to the Pink performance of the US national anthem. Now, if we hadn't have known she was sick, you could watch that performance and go, what on earth is going on there? That she has made an absolute mess of that performance. When you learn that she was actually quite ill with the flu, you're able to contextualize and frame the performance differently and go, do you know what? Wow, she actually did, pretty well, and more power to her for stepping up and being the professional in the moment. It changes the concept. Just that one piece of information completely changes the scenario. Now, it may well, when we were commenting last week about Fergie's performance, there was a couple of things that people came back to me and said, and which I thought was really high, really important that we reflect on. Firstly, the commentary that got made was that I wasn't being strong enough in my view, that how could I possibly say that it was a good performance, etc. Well, and in fact, I didn't say it was a great performance. I said, it wasn't the best, and technically, it wasn't great. And what I was trying to do was walk the line of a moderate response. Now, when we do these things live, one can always look with 20/20 vision back on what one has said and go, maybe I didn't do the best job of that. I gave it a hit out. The other comment that got made, and I wanted to just voice this because I thought it was a really good one, is, in reflection on that performance, that, the national anthem is not necessarily the best place to create an iconic performance. That in fact, the national anthem should be a space that we gather around to unify the audience, and in the case of a sports event, both teams around a central ideal, and we ground the performance in that. And look, I thought that was a really valuable comment. It was not a thing that I had reflected on. It's not a comment that I'd made, and I thought that really added to the discussion. In fact, I think it was Video Bob who made that comment. Video Bob comments on the channel here quite often, and often makes some really valuable commentary. If it wasn't Video Bob, then I apologize to whoever made it. I thought your comment was really valuable. And so when we reflect back on these circumstances, it is important to try and make your assessment of other singers through, it's a bit, another adage, walk a mile in another man's shoes, and then make your assessment on, how they're going. And I don't know what the pressure is like to step up in front of an international audience and sing. I do know what it's like to do it in front of a national audience, and look, to be honest with you, it's not one that I overly enjoyed. It has a lot of pressure to it, and a lot of stress, and I've done it both successfully, and I've actually also done it very unsuccessfully, and I've shared that story before here. In fact, I'm just looking down at my notes. There was one story I did want to just briefly share before I jump on to sharing Jody's comment for everyone. There's one story that I wanted to share. I'm just looking over here too, that making sure that we're all going okay. You know how this YouTube thing can go. It's good to see so many people jumping in here and making comment and adding to the discussion. The one thought that I'd had around the Fergie performance was that, perhaps she was looking to create an iconic performance of the national anthem, and many celebrities have successfully done that in the past, and I wonder whether Fergie was trying to do the same thing. I think in hindsight, it was not the best idea. Now, I say that sharing this story. I was invited to perform at a conference. It was sort of a corporate conference dinner. It was actually for, I think it was from memory, the Queensland Conference for Baptist Pastors. Highly conservative audience. In my infinite wisdom, I decided to sing a song that many of you will have heard of before, called Broken Vow by Josh Groban. It's a song that I love to sing. It's one of those songs that just seems to sing itself. It's just, as a singer, you feel like you're just along for the ride. And so, in fact, my manager at the time said, "Daniel, do you really think it's a good idea to sing this song about, marriage breakup and, adultery and whatever at a Baptist pastor's conference?" And I said, "Oh, it'll be great." Everyone loves it when I sing it at other times. And seriously, it was one of the worst performance decisions I have ever made. The ice literally started to, close in on the room as these conservative Baptist pastors started to look around, dropping their knives and forks and just sort of giving me the evil eye. And, I don't blame them. In hindsight, I look back and go, it was my immaturity that led me to singing a song that was contextually inappropriate. And those same pastors, in a different environment, those same individuals may have really enjoyed the performance, but that's not what I'd been hired to do. I'd been hired to do a completely different role, and I stuffed up. And I do wonder whether Fergie, in her performance, when she was doing this, I wonder whether she's sort of got, 4 or 5 phrases in and started to feel the ice just forming down the walls as the audience in the space, in the auditorium, started to sort of go, "What on earth is she doing?" And that would have, for her as a performer, that would have been palpable. It would have been scary. It would have been, she would have felt, I would dare say, she would have felt highly vulnerable. And it may well have been that in the moment, she may well have been thinking, this was a mistake. I can remember getting halfway through the first chorus of Broken Vow with my Baptist pastor friends and going, this was a mistake. I should have listened to wiser heads, but I didn't. And I will never know what Fergie thought in that regard, but maybe that's what she was doing. So when we're making our assessment of these singers who are doing these things and perhaps they're making mistakes, perhaps they're doing a great job. I encourage us as a community of people who are on the journey of learning to sing to be moderate in our views, to not immediately jump to conclusions. What I'm encouraging us to do is to develop our critical reasoning so that we don't immediately jump to conclusions. The whole critical realism, the classic illustration of that is three blind men all touching different parts of what is ultimately an elephant. But one blind man touches the tail, he thinks he's feeling a snake. When another person touches one of the legs, he thinks he's feeling a massive tree trunk. And when another person touches one of the ears, he thinks he's feeling a big massive leaf. And I'm messing the story up, but you get the point, right? Each person is only got one aspect of the story, and they're coming to a completely incorrect conclusion around what's going on. It's only once someone with some vision to see the entire elephant is able to go, well, actually, that's the tail, that's the leg, and that's the ear of a bigger picture, which is called an elephant. And that's what I think we need to do when it comes to assessing other singers. Let's not be so quick to judge, because ultimately that judgment does come back upon us in a manner that can be quite scary, because when we live with a critical mind that has a harsh edge to it, what we start to do is we start to then think that others are judging us in the same manner, and that can really bring the performer unstuck, because you no longer see your audience as co-contributors to the performance space, but you see them as an enemy that is, wanting to attack you, and it can be simply all born out of your own attitude and approach. So it's something that we need to be careful as performers. It's something that I know I have failed in far too many times, to my shame, but it's something that I'm wanting to work on and become better at, really developing a heart that is a little bit more supple, that is not, drawn so quickly to the black and white, but first of all wants to assess and account for the fact that there is grey. I hope that's been a positive thing for us to reflect on. I think it has, and I hope. Hey, why don't you leave a thumbs up if you on the video if you've enjoyed that discussion, and I can see many of you have jumped in and are having some really good discussion in the commentary. What I want to do now, and in fact I'm going to do it this way because I think this will be a bit of fun, is what we're going to do now is go directly across. I want to show you this, I want to read this post that Jody has given us. So let's do this first. So here is my beautiful family, and you'll recognise me. That stunner in the middle is my wife, Jody, and then I've got my gorgeous two girls. The one closest to Jody is my eldest. Her name is Caitlin, and then Taran is my youngest, and then there's my son Jaden, who looks a little bit like me in that photo, if I might be so bold. Hopefully looks like Jody a bit more. This photo was taken this last Monday, a week ago, and it is actually at Jody's final cancer treatment. It has been a long journey of 7 months, and this was her final, where she gets, see that little thing that's connected to her chest? That's through what's called a port. Hopefully that's not too confronting, but it's where the chemo is administered, and it was the final afternoon. So this was Wednesday last week. It was when she was having it removed for the final time. And so what I want to just very quickly do, because so many of you have been so supportive these last 6 months or so, and so kind in your words and well wishes, I wanted to share with you the Facebook post. It's very short, that Jody has shared. So let me just quickly read it to you, because in many respects this is written to you, and I wanted to share it with you because some of you won't get to see it on Facebook. So Jody writes, 7 months ago today, our little family's world was turned upside down by an unexpected diagnosis. This week, the whole gang came to the oncology clinic to mark the end of the chemotherapy phase of my treatment. I'm still riding the side effects roller coaster, have some months ahead of me for recovery, more tests to check progress, and eventually surgery to remove my port when the doctor gives the go-ahead. It's not over by a long shot, but we are some way along the great misadventure, which is what Jody has been calling this the entire time, the great misadventure, and we're doing okay. Here's what we've managed together so far. 1 cancer diagnosis, 1 MRI, 2 abdominal surgeries, 2 intravenous lines implants, 3 other procedures, minor surgery, 3 CT scans, 3 ultrasounds, about 6 x-rays, 8 external scars, 12 days intravenously fed, 12 cycles of chemo, 21 days admitted to hospital, a further 26 days of surgery admissions, at least 400 blood tests, and 40 blood tests, 400 would be a lot, and countless days of countless side effects. Along the way, we've been looked after by, and this is the message to you guys, along the way I've been looked after by, in no particular order, wonderful friends and family, you know who you are, our GP, minister, specialist surgeon, neighbours, gastroenterologist, our tribe from church, and general surgeon, a few anaesthetists, the kids' teachers and coaches, our oncologist, colleagues and clients, physios, fellow patients, oncology pharmacists, my bosses, ICU doctor and nutritionist, parents from schools, psychologists, school chaplains, and a whole gang of nurses in surgery, on the ward and in oncology. We have been terrified, hopeful, tired, educated, brave, exhausted, inspired, angry, frustrated, relieved, proud, grateful, and loved. Thanks to those who have shared in the great misadventure thus far, both up close and from afar. We are grateful for your concern, thoughts, prayers, practical support, wonderful words, and beautiful gifts. And we are. It has been a challenging roller coaster, but you know that this phase has come to an end of Jody's treatment, and so thank you very much. From Jody and from my children and from me for all of the support that you have shown us to date. And I'll continue to keep you up to date as the journey rolls on, because as Jody states, this is just the end of the chemotherapy phase. Now we move into the scanning phase and to really investigate the success of the treatment. Okay. So let's just do a little bit of, we've got 5 or 10 minutes to do a little bit of Q&A, and I try to remember to kick off Q&A with this. Okay, so quite a bit of discussion going on here, and I just want to come all the way back up. Home Mama, good to have you back. It's been a while due to work, but glad to be back watching your videos. I've been practicing through and I can't thank you enough. You're more than welcome, Home Mama. I'm hoping that your voice is going well. I never thought about it. Some good commentary here about the discussion. Well, we've actually, look at this, everyone. That is a lot of discussion. Mind you, we started out with nearly a whole page with some of you jumping in very early. Of course, if you do want to be notified of when I go live, if you do want to make sure you don't miss it when I actually go live, you've got to subscribe to the channel, you've got to hit the white bell icon, and then YouTube will tell you when I'm going live, and so you're ready to go that way. Coming down, Linda's saying, I missed the notification. No, Linda, I just started a little bit earlier today. And when you look back, you'll see why. It's all right. We'll figure it out, this whole thing. Lucky's in Manila right now. Awesome. And about to go on national TV. Hey, all the best, Lucky. We at Voice Essentials are backing you. We think you'll do a great job, and we want to hear next week how it goes. What were you thinking, Dan? I dare say that was to do with my performance of Broken Vow. I wasn't thinking, Linda. That's the point. I was not thinking. Can I just say that it was a few years ago, right? So, in my defence, I've matured. I'd like to think I wouldn't make the same mistake again. Make sure you're leaving your questions here, everyone, so that we can get in here. I saw Tim Kaufman. It was during a school talent show. Matt's saying here, one time I actually made a particularly bold choice that was a really good one. And even though it was lip syncing, it was a really good choice. Okay, cool. Very good. Sometimes look, when we take risks, and we don't want to, and this is the point I made last week's video, we don't want to not take risks. I think there needs to be more risk taking. But there are good risks and there are bad risks. To sing Broken Vow about adultery and whatever in front of conservative Baptist pastors, not a good risk. A pretty dumb risk, right? But if you take wise risks, calculated risks, then it can be really highly rewarding for not only you, the performer, but also for your audience. And I dare say that that's perhaps what Fergie was doing last week. She was, it happened a few weeks back. She was taking a risk. Maybe it was even calculated, but it didn't really pay off. And she has paid the consequence for that. Thank you everyone for your kind words about my gorgeous family. And I'll certainly pass all of your well wishes on. I'm just turning down here to Julia. Getting rid of mucus that lingers. Actually, Julia, I've actually got a whole video dedicated to that horrible thing called phlegm that sort of just clogs us singers up. If you jump across to the channel, I forget what it's called, just go looking for I do remember what it's called, 7 tips to get rid of mucus. One of the key things to get rid of mucus is to steam. Get yourself a personal steamer, vapor inhaler, and it helps to loosen by virtue of the heat and the hydration, the humidity, helps to loosen that mucus. The other thing that contributes to lingering mucus is actually dehydration. So make sure that you up your hydration levels, drink more than you usually would, and it doesn't necessarily just help to wash it away externally, but it hydrates your bloodstream, which helps to hydrate the membrane and the vocal tract lining, and helps to move it that way as well. Matt's got a quick question. I know you talk a lot about large vocal range, but are there virtues found in a limited? Well, that's an interesting question, Matt. Actually, I don't always talk. Okay, allow me to qualify. Here on the channel, I think mostly I try to encourage people to not get caught up in range, to not be too concerned about having a massive range, because having a massive range is not what great singing is about. In fact, I did a whole video where we talked about Frank Sinatra and his voice, and how his voice much of the time was spent over within an octave and a half. There are examples of him going outside of that, but the vast majority of his career is spent on what these days we would class as a very limited range. And so because he had really identified that the narrative and the narrative driven by excellent phrasing and tone, these were the things that drove excellent singing. And so, if you, for whatever reason, feel you have a limited range, in no way should that stop you from singing. It should encourage you towards, yes, you can further and develop your range. And I do encourage singers to explore their range. Notice my careful use of the word. I want you to explore the boundaries of your range, and that may well mean you discover the anatomical aspects of your range that you have not explored before. But even if you don't do that and you just spend time within an octave and a half, it means that you'll learn to use that limited range, and I use that very loosely, to the best of your ability. Always remember, it's not about perfect notes. Good singing is not about perfect notes. It's not about high notes. It's not about low notes. It's about communication. And that is so important. And Matt, I'm actually really glad you raised that. It gave me an opportunity to talk to it. One more question. And I'm going to give it to Linda, because Linda jumps on here, as does Karen. Thank you, ladies, for keeping the discussion nice and safe. And I'm going to give this question to Linda because she does such a good job for us as one of our moderators. Got a vibrato question. Oh, I had you, and here I am. You've given me one of them, a curly question, Linda. What is the difference between saying normal frequency vibrato and that really fast one, like a goat? The vibrato rate, then it's classed for. Now, this is a classical measurement, and to be honest with you, I can't remember the text I took it from, but this is actually a text researched number. For men, the vibrato rate is around about 5.0 hertz, and from memory, in fact, let me just, oh, hang on, we don't want that. Why are we doing that? Here we go. I've just got to look at something, and I can tell you the exact figures so that you all get to hear what the exact figures are and the exact readings are. Yeah, so for an average female classical voice, so this is not a contemporary voice. In fact, I go looking for significantly lower rates than this. But for the average female voice, classical, it's a 5.9 hertz adulation. And for the average male, it's 5.4 hertz. And that's very exact. I generally go looking for something more down around about the 4.5, 5.0 for contemporary singers. But again, vibrato is not something that I, overly drive or encourage. So I hope that's helpful, Linda. And I mean stylistically, you've written here, is one style healthier or more desirable than the other? No, though vibrato is known to onset into the sound when the voice is mechanically free. And I think we are gaining more understanding also about what then happens upstream acoustically as the sound travels through the vocal tract, and the implications that has on the backward movement acoustically and how that affects the vocal folds. But now I'm on the edge of my own understanding. I'm still learning about this big world of acoustics and the exciting stuff that's going on there. So there you go, everyone. A successful technical show for the most part, I think, which has been good. We do these live hangouts every Monday, 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So that's 25 minutes ago the show will normally start. We started a little bit earlier today because some of you had jumped in early and I wanted to make sure I caught you all. Of course, we have 3 videos a week. There's another one coming out on Wednesday and another one that comes out, the vocal pit stop, usually they're about a minute and a half, really quick to watch on a Friday. And I know many of you have been really enjoying those. As always, leave a thumbs up if you're enjoying the video. Subscribe, hit the white bell icon so you get notified about the live hangouts. And Linda told me a couple of weeks ago that I'm often stopping these videos before sort of mid-sentence. It sounds like I've stopped mid-sentence. Actually, I think that's just what happens as far as the YouTube things go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this now, and hopefully it will stop and it'll make sense, and I won't stop mid-sentence. So here we go. I'm going to stop now and see how we go.